Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do, the podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And we've been talking about our elders, of course. And today we're going to talk about becoming great-grandparents. I knew one pair of my great-grandparents. The rest had passed on before I came about. So, that has kind of gone the way because more and more people know their great-grandparents or met their great-grandparents. And that's got a lot to do with the age that people start having children. So, there are more great-grandparents rolling around nowadays than there used to be, and people are living longer. So, it's a thing. As grandchildren grow up, grandparents generally see them less often. And that's true, and that's a shame. That's one of the things I regret is not seeing my grandma more, because she was great to me and she loved me more than anyone else, and I could have gone and seen her more, but I was living my life, and so I didn't. Okay, sorry about that, my son came in. But yeah, I used to call her on a regular basis and talk to her on the phone, but that's not the same. We all know that. I could have gone to her house more and saw her on weekends, but I didn't. And it wasn't until she got in the hospital and then in a nursing home where I started going and seeing her every week. And of course, her health went down. So, I don't feel like I had as much time with her as I could have had. Now my other grandmother, we saw her every holiday, and, my dad and them kept in touch with her just about every day. And so, I didn't feel like there was a gap there. So, my other one lived on the other side of town, and it was, just further, and the word was used, inconvenient to go and see her. So, I wished I had not gone along with that, but at the time I did. I was a little more capitulating back in the day. You probably can't imagine that of me, can you? Then when grandchildren become parents, grandparents move into a new role. Great-grandparents. And like I said, I know a few people who are great-grandparents already. And, I'm not even a grandma yet. So, I've got an adopted one. But, I'm not a grandma yet. My youngest one's only 25, so we got time. Because of age, declining health, and the scattering of families, great-grandparents tend to be less involved than grandparents in a child's life. And I know a set of my great-grandparents lived in a different state. So, if they would have been alive, I would have only gone to see them as much as I did, like my great aunts and uncles in the summertime or, a Christmas holiday or something. So I wouldn't have been able to even see them as much as, we would have probably liked. So, that's a reality. Sometimes families split up, move away, and, you can't just drop everything and go all the time. People have to work and things. Sometimes people who even have great-grandparents, I know people who met, there was a guy, I think he was 13, had just met his great-grandparents for like the first time because they lived so far away, several states away, and they'd never gone, and then they finally went, and he didn't know what to say. He was someone I know's kid, but he's like, what do you say to somebody that you never met, but they're your great-grandparent and you're 13 already? What do you say? And because 4 or 5 generation families are relatively new, because like I said, people are living longer now. So back in the old days, that wasn't a thing. When people were dying in their 30s and 40s, you're lucky to see your grandparents. There are few generally accepted guidelines for what great-grandparents are supposed to do. And I can tell you what you're supposed to do. You're just supposed to love on your family. That's what you're supposed to do. Still, most great-grandparents find the role fulfilling, and I can only hope I lived that long to where I could see my great-grandkids. I would like that. Great-grandparenthood offers a sense of personal and family renewal because, you get to see my great-grandma loved me. She used to take me back there and tell me fairy stories, and I loved hearing those. And she used to rub my back, and, I have vague memories of these things. And I had a vision. I was told that I laid on her bed and probably went to sleep. But I had a vision of her coming through a window with two, at the time I called them birdmen, which now I would call them angels, and came to talk to me. And she said, I'd already gone, but I had to get permission to come and talk to you. I want to tell you some things. And what she told me was that my life was going to be hard. It wasn't going to be easy, that, the people in my family were not going to be nice to me. But I was to stay strong. And pray and remember God is there for me, and Jesus is there for me, and that he will see me through. And of course, at the ripe old age of 4, I'm like, wow. So I went out and I told my mom, Grandma, I said, Grandma just came through the window and talked to me with 2 birdmen. And they're like, shh, don't upset your grandma, but it was a thing. It happened. So, but, I have fond memories of her, and I think she did that because I was not allowed to go to the funeral, because I was 4, and, they were trying to save me from something, but I don't think that's a good idea. I think that smaller children should be allowed to see the person who's deceased, because then they understand a little more. Their great-grandparent or grandparent just didn't disappear one day, and now they're not there anymore. I think that's important. I've taken all my children to all the funerals that we've had in the family and my husband's family. So, I think that's important, for that closure for them. A sense of diversion and a mark of longevity. And I guess that's in their life, because as you get older, life can be more sad and boring, and then you have more little people to, invest some love and time in, so that keeps you from sitting around and being depressed. And yeah, that's kind of a mark of distinction there. Hey, I lived long enough to see my great-grandkids. So when 40 great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, ages 71 to 90, were interviewed, 93% made such comments as, life is starting again in my family. Seeing them grow keeps me young, and I never thought I'd live to see it. So generally, it's a positive experience for folks, and they like it. More than 1/3 of the sample, mostly women, were close to their great-grandchildren. And, of course, that would be cool. Like I said, I liked my great-grandparents, and my grandfather passed away, a few years later after that, after my great-grandmother did. He was in a nursing home down on a road nearby here. And one of the fonder memories I have is we came to see him in the nursing home, and in his bottom drawer, he had a box of Girl Scout cookies. And he said, hey, come here. And we're like, yeah? And he's like, get in that bottom drawer. And we got in the bottom drawer, and there was the box of Girl Scout cookies. He goes, eat you some cookies. So, that was one of my memories of him, that he was sneaking his Girl Scout cookies in the nursing home. So, the ones with the most intimate connections were likely to live nearby and to be close to the children's parents and grandparents as well, which, goes without saying. Often helping out with loans, gifts, and babysitting. So, you're blessed if you have that great-grandparent dynamic going on. Okay, and moving on, the end of life. Like we were talking about yesterday, let's face it, if you were born, you're going to die. That's just the facts of life. Sorry if I broke the bad news to you. I'm sure I wasn't the first, but if I was, sorry about that. Human beings are individuals. Well, I tout that all the time. They undergo differing experiences and react to them in different ways. And that, like I say, something I preach about, the individual and different perspectives. The old adage about the men feeling the elephant. Everybody's feeling something different. They're all wrong because it's an elephant, but everyone has their own point of view. So, it's probably not wrong. It's just the way they experience things. Yet one unavoidable part of everyone's life is its end. Like I was talking about the other day about the meme where it says, "Don't take life so seriously, nobody gets out alive anyway." That's the facts. Death is an integral element of the lifespan. Because like I said, if you're alive, you're going to die. The better we understand this inevitable event and the more wisely we approach it, the more fully we can live until it comes. And then again, also there's the saying, live each day as if it were your last. Live life to the fullest, get the most out of it, however you want to put that. In facing death and bereavement, as in all other aspects of life, physical, cognitive, and psychosocial elements intertwine. And again, in every aspect of life it does. So when you're getting ready to die, why wouldn't it as well? The psychological experience surrounding the biological fact of death depends on our understanding of its meaning. That understanding reflects the way a society defines death and the customs that have evolved around it. Now, pretty much here in the good old USA and most of, European and Asian countries, someone passes away, you have a funeral. The person is then cremated or buried in a plot. There are places where there are different customs. I can't remember what the country is, but if you Google it, I'm sure you can find it, where every year they dig up the deceased person and clean them up and wash the clothes, change their clothes and everything, and then they lay them back down. They even will take pictures of themselves with their dead relatives. Now, we probably think that's abhorrent. I personally think, not a great way to go. Because, why do you want to see your relative like that? I wouldn't want that. They feel like it's just inevitable and everything, but, I'd like to remember them the way they were. I don't want to remember them like they are at that point. So that's just me, maybe, but that's how I feel about that one. But in their society, it's a normal, average thing. The key to the question of death unlocks the door of life. That's from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross' Death, The Final Stages of Growth, 1975. All the while I thought I was learning how to live, I haven't been learning, I've been learning how to die. And that's from Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. So his opinion was, he thought he was learning how to live, but he really just learning how to die. And that's what a lot of folks feel like, is aging gracefully. You learn how to live your life and be who you are, and you age gracefully, and then it starts dialing back a little bit, and you realize how to come to terms with things and peace with things that you thought when you were younger would not be possible. So, okay, Louisa May Alcott, devoted sister. We were talking a little bit about sisters yesterday, but now here in death, we're bringing that up again. One of the most moving parts of the classic 19th century novel Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, 1832 to 1888, is the chapter recounting the last year in the life of gentle, home-loving Beth. And that's one of my favorite books. My father gave me that book. I'm not supposed to mention him. Anyway, someone gave me that book when I was 9 years old. And I love that book. The third of the March sisters, the others being Meg, Jo, and Amy. Beth's life and her death at age 18 are based on those of Alcott's own sister Elizabeth, Lizzie, who wasted away and died at 23. And I mentioned my little sister died at the age of 12, and I was 17. So that was hard. That was a pretty rough blow. Excuse me, because, you just assume your sibling's going to be there with you for the rest of your life, and So to lose one, especially that young, just doesn't make sense. Alcott's fictionalized account of her family's growing intimacy in the face of tragedy has struck an empathetic chord in generations of readers and in viewers of the 4 film versions of the book, many of whom have never actually seen a person die. And, that was probably how do you want to put that? A talked about thing back in the day when this was going on. Because in the 19th century, there were a lot of books coming out about death and things like that. And so that was beforehand, in the Victorian era, just not something that was talked about. That was a no-no. And so, this probably added to some of the, scandalous books that came out in those days. In the novel, realizing that Beth's illness was terminal, the family accepted the inevitable and tried to bear it cheerfully. That's the best thing that you could do. If someone's dying and they're dying, just see them, talk to them. Sometimes people withdraw. I had a family member who just withdrew. They didn't want to see anybody, talk to anybody. But the best thing you can do is, act like, hey, we're still here. We still care about you. Just do the best you can for them. Rather than a lot of people, they hear somebody's dying, they don't even want to see them. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And so they just stand back and remove themselves. And that's the opposite of what they should be doing. They put away their grief. And like I say, that's the best thing you can do. There's a family member who's going through some tough times right now, in my husband's family, and we just keep praying for them, and they're living their life to the fullest. They're doing the things they love to do, and when we see them and we talk to them, we certainly don't bring that up, and we talk to them like we would normally, and invite them to do stuff with us or whatever, because that's how you should be. You shouldn't be standoffish to people because they're getting ready to die. The pleasantest room in the house was set apart for Beth, and in it was gathered everything that she most loved. And that's what I've said about if I go into nursing home. I want my books. I want a laptop so I can write books. I want my art stuff. I want my musical instruments. My room would be pretty full of stuff. Not like some of these old folks, you got nothing in there. But mine would be pretty full of stuff. Some fabric, my sewing, box, my crochet stuff, some craft stuff. So yeah, I'm not gonna sit there and waste away. I'm gonna have a life, even if I'm in there. So that's just how I roll. But that is the thing that you can do, is surround them. If they love cheeseburgers, that was the thing we did. It was like, well, we know he loves this stuff, so let's bring him some. And make sure that they're surrounded by things that they love to do. And that's the best thing you can do for someone. Father's best books found their way there. Mother's easy chair, Joe's desk, Amy's finest sketches, and every day Meg brought her babies on a loving pilgrimage to make sunshine for Auntie Beth. And again, that's like something you can do. Give the person a good send-off. Don't withdraw yourself, and be standoffish because you don't know what to say or do. Because that death is theirs, not yours. It's not about you. So that's the thing that should be doing, is making their days brighter and happier until it's time for them to go. Here, cherished like a household saint in its shrine, sat Beth, tranquil and busy as ever. Again, like I said, that's how I'm going to be. tranquil and busy as ever. To me, that's the way to go. The feeble fingers were never idle, and one of her pleasures was to make little things for the school children daily passing to and fro. Alcott, 1929, pages 533 through 534. So let's see, we can tell you what page that's on if you want to thumb through Little Women and find that. As Beth's illness progressed, the increasingly frail invalid put down the sewing needle that had become so heavy. Now talking wearied her. Faces troubled her. Pain claimed her for its own. And her tranquil spirit was sorrowfully perturbed by the ills that vexed her feeble flesh. And I've noticed sometimes folks get like that too. When they're passing, they're in pain, and you can tell they're in pain. My grandmother, I went to see her in the home, and she passed away, 2 weeks later. And she was in pain. She couldn't breathe, and they had stopped treating her. And so, I had to see her like that, and it was hard. And, it just hurts you. It just hurts you in your heart. And then on my husband's side, his grandmother, my little boy was, the littlest one was 2 when she passed away, but she loved him, he loved her. She was living over there at his grandma's house, his mama's house for a while. And he would go talk to her every day, and they just loved each other. And when she was there at hospice and we'd go see her, he would climb up in the bed with her. And there was a comment made, and I said, no, that's allowed. Let him do that, because he was very close to her and he loves her, and he's learning to let go. He's realizing that she's going to go from him, and he's processing this in his way, and that's a good thing. So you leave him alone. So that's what happened. But with the wreck of her frail body, Beth's soul grew strong. That's what happens with a lot of people. Their body's going, but they, are ready to go to the next plane of existence and ready to be with God. And so you hear a lot of folks getting ready to go, talking about God, Jesus, angels, because they're getting ready to go. Jo stayed with Beth constantly, as Alcott herself had stayed with her sister, Lizzie. And now we used to go up to the hospital when my sister was passing every day. It was rough for the 2 weeks that she was passing, to watch her degrade every day. When she first came in, she was talking to us, joking with us. Then it got to be where she was slurring her words, and then they wouldn't allow her to drink anything. And so, we brought flowers, and she tried to grab the vase of flowers and drink out of it. It was just awful. And she asked if we could even bring Bear's bowl of water that he would happily share, and that was the dog. And then she was no longer conscious, and then they had a stent in her head where it was showing the pressure, and eventually they just turned that off. It got so high they didn't want us to even see it. They had to tape her eyes shut, it was just terrible to watch. So if you've ever been through that, if you've ever watched somebody go down like that, you'll know it's heartbreaking. I can see why she wrote about this, because it clearly impacted her. I wrote about it in one of my books. I tried to change all the names around and make people not be people, and and I had to incorporate 4 other people's stories into this one story. So I think I did a pretty good job. But yeah, it impacts you. And so it doesn't surprise me that she wrote about that. Sleeping on a couch by her side, and waking often to renew the fire, to feed, lift, or wait upon the patient creature. And that's from pages 534 to 535. Beth finally drew her last quiet breath on the bosom where she had drawn her first, and mother and sisters made ready for the long sleep that pain would never mar again. And that's on page 540. So, the family in that story probably did the same thing that Alcott's family did, and the same thing that we did in our family, and my husband's family did for their loved ones. And that's what you should do. Like I said, there's a lot of people who can't handle it, standoffish, don't get involved, stand back and just let things happen, and don't try to make the person's life a little better or easier. And that's not good for anyone, because you're going to regret that someday. And no one wants to be alone when they go, and that's what my husband's grandfather, and he was getting ready to go, and we walked in there, and I was wearing, we had just come from something else. It might have been his brother's funeral even. But I was wearing a purple dress with a white sweater with gold stuff through it. And I came in there, and he said, "She's not supposed to be here yet." And they all looked, and, what's going on? "She's not supposed to be here yet. It ain't time for the angels." So he thought I was an angel with this gold sweater on. But I said, I'm going to go out of the room because I'm clearly upsetting him. But they visited with him, and it wasn't a day or two later, he was gone. So he was ready. And like I said, I scared him because he thought I was an angel coming to get him. But, people don't want to be alone. And, I had a relative who passed, and he was being taken care of by another relative. And he said, "I'm thirsty." And he said, "Wow, everything's sparkly. Go get me a drink." And so they went to get a drink. When they came back, that person had passed away. So, people know, when they're going, and they don't want to be alone, and you shouldn't leave them alone. You should be there for them, to make their life better, to get them, anything they're wanting, because let's face it, they're dying, not you, and, you should be able to be there for them and make their life better in whatever way you can. And there are people who are also loners, and they want to withdraw, and they don't want anybody around. That's like say some animals. We had a dog that she wanted to be there with us, and she was whining, and I sat down. I had her head in my lap, and I was petting her till she went. She drew her last breath. We had a cat come in the bed with us, laid between me and my husband, and he wanted to be there with us when he went, and in the night he went. And then there are others that will hide. They know they're not good, and they go and they want to be alone. So people can be like that too. They might want to withdraw and be alone. So go with what the person wishes. That's called their last wishes. Go with what they want, and be there for them, because that's important. And that's where I'm going to leave you for today. I hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching or listening. That's all for now. Until next time.